Roland stepped off the shuttle, his boots touching the metallic surface of the capital planet. The city stretched high into the sky, towers gleaming under the pale light of the twin suns. Ships of all shapes and sizes moved across the airways, carrying goods, passengers, and messages between the worlds. The air smelled faintly of ozone and engine oil. The humans in the galaxy were few, scattered, and often misunderstood. The Council of Alien Civilizations that ruled this sector looked down on humans. They were considered fragile, unpredictable, and incapable of great accomplishments. Roland knew this. He had heard the rumors and warnings. Yet here he was, standing tall, his armor polished to a reflective silver, a symbol of both protection and pride. The council building rose before him like a giant, carved from crystal and steel. Its surface shimmered with light, reflecting the suns in a way that made it appear almost alive. Roland felt a moment of awe, but he did not let it distract him. He had a purpose. His human delegation had been called to discuss trade agreements, but he knew the true challenge would not be numbers or contracts. It would be earning respect in a place where humans were laughed at. Inside, the council chamber was vast, far larger than anything Roland had seen. The walls were lined with alien symbols glowing softly. The floor was smooth and each step echoed with authority. Delegates from dozens of species were present. Some had multiple limbs, others moved with grace that humans could not imagine. Their faces reflected intelligence, curiosity, and in many cases, arrogance. At the center of the room sat Commander Vasha. She was tall, her skin a deep shade of violet, and her eyes were sharp and bright. Her posture was perfect, commanding attention without speaking. Roland felt a chill at her gaze, but he did not falter. He had been trained for moments like this, moments when words alone were not enough, and silence could speak louder than shouts. The first words came from Vasha, and they were harsh. "Humans," she said, her voice carrying across the chamber. "You are fragile creatures. You wear machines and call them armor, yet your minds are weak. We wonder why you even attempt to negotiate with us. You are not worthy." The room erupted with murmurs. Some delegates laughed quietly. Others whispered to each other, nodding in agreement. Roland stood still, listening. He could feel the sting of her words, but he did not respond. He knew that reacting with anger would only give her more satisfaction. The strength of a human was not in the quickness of retaliation. It was in control, in presence, and in patience. One of the younger delegates, a creature with green scales and 6 eyes, tilted his head and asked, "How can such a small and fragile species survive among the stars? Your kind is weak and slow. Why should we even listen to you?" Roland did not answer immediately. Instead, he studied the chamber, observing the reactions of each alien. He noticed that many were confident because they expected humans to fail. They had never faced someone who could remain calm under insult. He allowed their doubts to settle around him, like shadows he would walk through without flinching. Finally, Roland spoke. His voice was steady and clear, carrying over the chamber. "We survive because we adapt. We survive because we learn. We survive because we never give up." A murmur ran through the crowd. His words were simple, but there was weight in them. Weight that came not from anger, but from truth. Vasha's eyes narrowed. She was not used to being challenged calmly. Most beings would react with fear, anger, or pride. Roland reacted with neither. He spoke and then he waited. The council had arranged a demonstration to judge the humans. They called it a test of capability, but Roland knew it was a test of ridicule. The humans would be placed in a challenge designed to humiliate. The aliens expected failure, and some even hoped for it. The first part of the test was a physical obstacle course. It twisted and turned through zero-gravity chambers, artificial lava pits, and narrow tunnels designed to test strength and agility. Many aliens approached the course with ease. Some flew over obstacles with wings. Some used extra limbs to climb walls. When the first humans attempted it, they struggled. Whispers of doubt and laughter spread. Roland entered the course with his armor on. It was heavy, restricting some movement, but he did not complain. He analyzed each obstacle carefully, watching the patterns and understanding the physics. When he moved, it was precise, deliberate, and efficient. He did not rush, he did not panic, and he did not stumble. By the end of the course, Roland had finished with perfect timing. His movements had been clean and purposeful. The aliens watched him, their eyes wide with disbelief. They had expected clumsiness, weakness, or fear. Instead, they saw control, strategy, and skill. The next part of the test involved intelligence. The humans were given complex alien devices and asked to operate them, solve puzzles, and demonstrate understanding. Other species struggled, often giving up when the instructions were confusing or when the devices resisted their attempts. Roland approached the devices calmly. He observed, learned the patterns, and applied human logic. Where the devices required speed, he moved quickly but carefully. Where they required reasoning, he paused, considered the problem, and acted with precision. Within minutes, he had completed tasks that had stumped other delegates. The chamber grew quiet. Alien whispers filled the air, carrying astonishment and doubt. Humans were supposed to fail. Humans were supposed to be weak and ridiculous. Yet here was Roland, proving them wrong without a word of arrogance or defiance. When the demonstration ended, Commander Vasha stood. Her eyes glinted with sharpness. She spoke again, her words intended to wound. Even with your tricks and machines, human, you are nothing compared to us. You may complete a course or solve a device, but your spirit is fragile. You rely on tools, not strength. You rely on luck, not wisdom. The room waited for a response. Aliens expected rage, they expected pride, they expected embarrassment. Roland did not move. He did not speak. He looked at Vasha with calm eyes, not with fear, not with anger, but with clarity. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. Every alien felt the weight of his presence. They realized that their words had failed to touch him. Their cruelty had bounced off the armor of patience and dignity he carried within, invisible to their eyes but stronger than any metal. Then slowly, Roland reached for the latches of his armor. The room gasped as he began to remove each piece, setting it carefully aside. The polished metal clinked softly against the floor. Piece by piece, he shed the armor that had made him appear intimidating. Underneath, he wore simple clothes, unremarkable in appearance but radiating confidence. Vasha's expression flickered. Surprise, confusion, and irritation mixed in her eyes. She had expected confrontation, but not this. The silence that followed was more powerful than any words. Roland stood, fully exposed, yet unafraid. He had removed the external armor because he did not need it. His courage, his intelligence, and his dignity were enough. Some aliens whispered to each other. Others stared, unable to comprehend why a human would remove protection and still command respect. Roland's quiet action spoke louder than arguments or displays of force. It said that strength was not always visible, that courage could exist without aggression, and that dignity was an inner armor no one could take away. Roland turned slowly toward the exit, his gaze sweeping the room. He did not speak. He did not raise his hand in triumph. He simply walked, each step measured, each motion calm. The room held its breath. Aliens watched him leave, realizing that the human who had arrived as a figure of steel had left as a figure of principle. Outside, the humans who had come with him looked up in admiration. They understood without words what Roland had shown. A human's strength was not in weapons, machines, or intimidation. It was in intelligence, courage, and the refusal to be diminished by cruel words. The twin suns glinted on the city as Roland walked toward the waiting shuttle. He carried no armor, no weapons, and no need to prove himself further. His dignity, his calm, and his quiet confidence had already made their mark. The chapter ended not with a battle, not with a victory cry, but with a human walking away in silence, leaving others to reflect on the strength they had underestimated. After leaving the council chamber, Roland was escorted to a wide testing arena. The Alien Council had prepared a challenge designed to measure both strength and intelligence. The arena was enormous, stretching farther than the eye could see, with structures that twisted into impossible shapes. Sections of the ground moved unpredictably. Pools of strange liquid reflected light like mirrors. Machines hummed and clicked, awaiting human interaction. The other delegates watched from high platforms. Some leaned forward with curiosity, others with amusement. The aliens had set this challenge expecting the humans to fail. They thought the humans were too fragile, too unskilled, too slow to solve anything that required coordination, reasoning, and courage. Roland surveyed the arena. He noticed patterns the aliens overlooked. The shifting ground followed subtle rhythms. The pools of reflective liquid had currents beneath the surface. The machines, though complex in design, repeated cycles that could be understood with careful observation. "Your task," a voice announced from above, "is to reach the central platform. You must navigate obstacles, solve devices, and prove your capability. Failure is expected. You may begin. Roland took a deep breath. He did not rush. His human instincts told him to observe first, act second. The other species began moving immediately. They ran, flew, or leapt over obstacles with speed, but often without caution. Some fell into pits, others became trapped in moving structures. Their strength alone was not enough to overcome the complex design of the arena. Roland moved with patience. He stepped carefully on the shifting tiles, testing each one before committing his weight. When he came to a pool of strange liquid, he noticed faint currents pulling toward certain edges. Rather than rushing across, he used floating platforms nearby, adjusting their positions with small, precise movements. His mind worked as quickly as his body, thinking several steps ahead. Some aliens whispered in disbelief. He is slow, one said. But he is precise. He does not panic. He thinks. Roland reached the first device, a cube covered in symbols and buttons. Other delegates tried pressing buttons at random, hoping for luck. Most failed. Roland studied the symbols. He noticed repeating patterns, sequences that linked symbols to positions on the cube. He pressed the buttons in the correct order, and the cube opened, revealing a key. The key fit into a mechanism that allowed a bridge to extend across a gap. The aliens gasped. Humans were expected to fail at simple tasks. Yet here Roland solved a complex puzzle with calm observation and logic. He did not rush, he did not shout, he did not complain. He simply acted. As Roland progressed, the arena became more difficult. Sections moved faster. Machines required simultaneous coordination. Obstacles demanded both speed and reasoning. Many delegates struggled, some failing entirely. Roland adapted. He paused when needed, observed the next steps, and moved when the path was clear. The arena had a section where a wall of shifting panels rotated unpredictably. To pass through, one had to time movement perfectly. Many aliens hesitated, miscalculating the panels and getting stuck. Roland watched the movement for several rotations. He noticed a rhythm in the chaos. Timing his step, he moved gracefully through the wall without touching a single panel. His body was light, his mind focused, and his confidence steady. Next came a puzzle that combined logic and memory. A series of floating spheres hovered above a pit. Each sphere had a color and a number. The instructions required pressing spheres in a specific sequence based on both color and number. Delegates who tried random attempts failed quickly, some falling into the pit below. Roland crouched, studied the spheres, and began to calculate. He remembered sequences from earlier patterns in the arena. He started pressing spheres in order, carefully correcting any errors along the way. The sequence was long, but he completed it perfectly. A bridge lowered over the pit, allowing him to continue. Throughout the challenge, Roland's silence drew attention. He did not boast, he did not complain, he did not argue. His movements were deliberate, his focus absolute. Aliens watched in astonishment. They expected a human to panic, to fail, to beg for help. Instead, he advanced with precision, intelligence, and courage. Finally, Roland reached the central platform. It was higher than the rest of the arena and surrounded by a transparent energy field. To claim victory, he had to place a cube he had carried from the first puzzle onto a pedestal. The cube weighed more than it seemed, and the energy field pulsed with force. Roland approached carefully. He studied the pulses of the energy field and noticed brief intervals when the field weakened. Timing his movements, he placed the cube on the pedestal with perfect alignment. A loud chime echoed through the arena. The energy field dissipated. Roland had completed the challenge. The room fell silent. Aliens stared at him, unable to hide their shock. Their test had been designed to humiliate. Their expectations had been low. Yet this human had succeeded without aggression, without arrogance, and without any show of fear. Commander Vasha's eyes narrowed. Her plan to belittle humans had failed spectacularly. She had expected Roland to rely on his armor or brute force. Instead, he had relied on something she could not see: human ingenuity, patience, and courage. She spoke again, her voice colder than before. You have completed the challenge, human, yet you rely on tricks and timing. You do not possess true strength. You are fortunate to survive this test. Roland did not reply immediately. He took a moment to catch his breath. The arena had tested his body and mind, but he was unharmed. His armor had protected him earlier, but he realized now that his real protection had been his mind and calm determination. He looked around the arena, at the alien delegates who still whispered and stared. Their expressions showed doubt, confusion, and disbelief. They were beginning to understand that humans were not like other species. Strength was not always physical. Wisdom was not always taught. Courage was not always displayed with weapons. Roland spoke finally, his voice steady and quiet. Strength is not only in force. Intelligence is not only in knowledge. Courage is not only in bold actions. It is in understanding, adapting, and facing challenges without fear. The chamber below him shifted with murmurs. Some aliens leaned forward, trying to understand the meaning. Others turned away, unwilling to consider that humans could possess qualities they underestimated. Roland descended from the central platform and walked toward the exit. He did not celebrate. He did not raise his fists or shout. His calm presence was more powerful than any display of pride. He had shown what humans could do, but he had not allowed arrogance to taint his actions. Outside the arena, his human delegation waited. They had observed his every movement, silently learning. They saw not only a victory but a lesson. Human strength was not in weapons or armor alone. It was in intelligence, courage, and the ability to face impossible challenges with focus and patience. Roland's eyes met theirs. He did not need words. They understood. The humans would carry this example forward. The aliens would carry it in their own way, whether they chose to admit it or not. Commander Vasha observed from her platform. Her expression was hard to read. She had expected humiliation and anger, yet what she saw was quiet triumph. She did not know how to respond. She realized that the human before her was different from all others. He had faced their designed cruelty and emerged not broken, but stronger in ways she could not measure. The sun reflected off Roland's armor as he returned to his shuttle. He had completed the challenge, but the test was far from over. He sensed that the Council would attempt more ways to belittle humans, to see them fail. Yet Roland knew this truth. Humans adapted, humans endured, and humans thrived when faced with adversity. He did not speak of victory. He did not boast. He simply prepared for whatever challenge came next. For Roland, this was not about proving superiority. It was about showing that human determination and ingenuity were forces that could not be ignored, no matter how cruel the words or impossible the tests. And so, the human left the arena, his mind calm, his purpose clear, his courage quiet yet unshakable. He had proven something without speaking loudly. He had proven that humans, when faced with cruelty and challenge, had the power to endure and succeed in ways no alien could fully comprehend. After completing the Council's test, Roland returned to the main chamber. His human delegation followed quietly, their faces a mix of pride and concern. They had seen his brilliance in the arena, but they also knew that Commander Vasha's words could still wound, not the body, but the spirit. Vasha sat in her usual position, tall and imposing. Her eyes gleamed with authority but also with irritation. She had underestimated the human, and it showed. She leaned forward slightly, her hands resting on the smooth surface of the council dais, and spoke. "You completed the challenge," she began, her tone measured, cold, and deliberate. "But do not mistake success in a contrived arena for true power. Humans are clever, yes, but cleverness is not enough. You rely on timing, luck, and observation. You lack real strength, real influence. Your victories mean nothing in the wider galaxy." Roland stood silently. He did not flinch, though the words were sharp, designed to belittle and provoke. The council chamber waited for his reaction. Many delegates whispered among themselves. They expected anger, perhaps a shout, maybe even a human breaking under insult. But Roland's silence was his first answer. It carried weight far greater than a heated response. His calmness unsettled the room more than any argument could. It was as if the human stood above the noise, confident in his own mind and heart, untouched by the cruelty aimed at him. Vasha continued. Her words grew sharper. "I have seen your species fail in countless ways. You are slow to act, weak to defend, fragile in body and mind. You rely on armor, machines, and tricks because you cannot rely on yourselves. Tell me, human, how can a species so fragile hope to survive among true civilizations?" The chamber fell silent. Even the aliens, who were usually quick to mock, hesitated. They sensed the tension. This human had faced their worst words without faltering. He had proven his skill in the arena, yet he did not use it to brag or fight back. He simply stood. Roland felt the sting of her words. He had heard similar insults throughout his life. Many humans had been called weak or inferior, judged by appearance or stereotypes rather than deeds. Yet he did not react with anger. He understood something that the council did not. Strength was not measured by loud words, and courage was not proved by aggression. Instead of replying verbally, Roland did something unexpected. He reached for the latches of his armor. Every eye in the chamber followed his movements with disbelief. Slowly, deliberately, he began to remove each piece. The polished metal clinked softly as he set it aside. Piece by piece, his external protection was gone. The room was stunned. Many delegates had expected a fight. They had expected him to shout, to argue, to defend himself with pride or weapons. Instead, the human was exposing himself vulnerable and unarmed. Yet his posture remained steady, his gaze unwavering. Vasha's expression changed. Shock, confusion, and irritation mixed across her face. She had believed that humans relied on armor to appear strong. She had assumed that without it he would be weak, perhaps panicked. Instead, he stood fully exposed, calm and dignified. Roland's removal of his armor was not an act of defiance in anger. It was a statement of principle. He did not need intimidation to demand respect. His courage, intelligence, and self-possession were enough. He had faced the cruel words without giving them power. Now he showed that he did not need external tools to reinforce his presence. A few delegates whispered in disbelief. "Why would he remove his armor?" one asked. "He is more powerful without it." Another shook his head. "It is impossible to understand humans. Their strength is not in force but in presence." Vasha's voice broke the silence, sharp and biting. "Do you think that will impress anyone? Standing unarmed will not erase your species' weaknesses. You are fragile and nothing can hide it." Roland remained silent. He did not argue. He did not flinch. His eyes were steady, his posture unwavering. His calmness carried more power than words. The message was clear. Strength is not always visible. Courage is not always loud. Dignity is an invisible shield stronger than any armor. Some delegates leaned forward, trying to read the human's expression. They realized that he was not afraid. He was not angry. He was not trying to prove anything. He simply understood himself and refused to be diminished by cruelty. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. The council realized that their attempts at humiliation had failed. They had prepared a test, expecting humans to falter under pressure. They had used words, insults, and derision, expecting rage or shame. Instead, the human stood calm, unshaken, and completely in control of himself. Roland finally moved. Without a word, he turned toward the exit. His steps were deliberate, slow, and steady. Every motion was a statement of quiet confidence. He did not rush. He did not look back. He walked, not in fear, not in anger, but in silent dignity. The chamber remained still. Aliens who had been ready to laugh now whispered among themselves. Some felt uneasy. They realized they had misjudged the human species. They had assumed weakness where there was resilience. They had assumed fragility where there was courage. Outside, his human delegation waited. Their eyes were wide with admiration. They understood the lesson without needing words. The human had shown them what it meant to be strong in the face of cruelty. Strength was not measured in machines, weapons, or intimidation. It was measured in courage, patience, and the ability to stand tall when others tried to tear you down. Vasha watched him leave. Her eyes narrowed, but she could not hide a flicker of respect, though she would not admit it aloud. She realized that the human had defeated her attempts not by force but by refusing to give power to her words. The council had underestimated the most important strength of all, the human spirit. As Roland walked down the corridor, his delegation following quietly, he did not speak of victory. He did not brag. He simply moved with purpose, his calmness more powerful than any shout or weapon. Every step was a lesson, every pause a demonstration of human resolve. The twin suns shone brightly through the windows, casting long shadows along the corridor. Roland's reflection in the polished metal walls showed a human who had faced cruelty and emerged unbroken. He had not needed armor, machines, or weapons. His courage, intelligence, and patience had been his protection. He understood something important. The council would continue to judge, to provoke, and to underestimate humans. Their words could be cruel, their challenges designed to humiliate, but none of it mattered. Humans adapted. Humans endured. Humans succeeded when others expected failure. His delegation gathered around him outside the chamber. Their eyes met his, full of quiet pride. They had seen his example. They had learned that dignity and courage were sometimes stronger than weapons, louder than words, and more powerful than any test. Roland's mind was calm, but focused. The challenge had been completed. The council's insults had been faced. Now it was time to move forward. He would not be drawn into arguments, and he would not allow cruel words to distract him from his purpose. The human left the council chambers, unarmed and unafraid. He had proven a lesson without speaking. He had proven that courage was not always loud. Strength was not always visible, and dignity could stand firm even when insulted, humiliated, or challenged. As the shuttle waited to take them back to their temporary quarters, Roland's delegation followed him silently. They had learned a lesson that no test, no challenge, and no cruel words could teach fully. It was a lesson of the human way, to face adversity with patience, to respond with calm, and to remain strong when others seek to diminish you. Roland looked out at the city one last time before boarding the shuttle. Towers gleamed under the light. Ships moved with purpose, and the world of alien civilizations seemed both vast and intimidating. Yet he did not feel fear. He had faced cruelty, tests, and doubt and emerged unshaken. The human spirit, he knew, was not fragile. It was enduring, intelligent, and courageous. As the shuttle lifted into the sky, the council chambers below seemed smaller, their attempts at dominance less impressive. Roland understood that true power was quiet, steady, and unyielding. It was not in the words of the cruel, nor in the fear of the timid. It was in the strength of character, in the courage to stand tall, and in the confidence to walk away in silence when others sought to provoke. This was the lesson of the human. And the council, knowingly or not, had witnessed it firsthand. Roland stepped out of the council chambers and into the long corridor that led to the outer hangar. The walls gleamed with polished metal, reflecting the twin suns outside. The air was cooler here, carrying the faint scent of machinery and ozone. His human delegation followed quietly, giving him space while keeping watch. Every step he took was steady, deliberate, and measured. He did not speak. He did not shout. He did not gesture angrily at the council or its delegates. He simply walked. Each movement was calm, but it carried authority. Even without armor or weapons, there was an undeniable presence about him. It was a presence that could not be intimidated, diminished, or ignored. Behind him, the alien council murmured. Delegates leaned forward in their seats, whispering to one another. They had expected confrontation, anger, or even a challenge. Instead, they had witnessed something they could not fully understand, a human who faced insult, humiliation, and doubt, yet remained steady and composed. Commander Vasha watched closely. Her violet eyes, usually sharp and commanding, betrayed a flicker of uncertainty. She had tried to crush this human's pride with words and tests. She had expected fear, aggression, or embarrassment. Yet here he walked away calmly, showing that her cruelty had no power over him. The corridor seemed endless, but Roland did not rush. He knew the council expected him to hurry, to show impatience or weakness. He did not give them the satisfaction. Each step was proof that he was in control of himself, his purpose, and his future. As he walked, he remembered the many humans who had faced ridicule before him. He thought of the explorers, traders, and settlers who had been dismissed as weak by alien civilizations. He thought of the scientists whose discoveries were doubted, the soldiers whose courage was underestimated, and the leaders who had been ignored. Roland understood that his actions in this moment carried weight far beyond himself. They would be remembered. They would inspire other humans. They would force the council to reconsider their assumptions, even if reluctantly. Every step he took was more than physical movement. It was a lesson. The aliens in the chamber below whispered urgently. Some were impressed. Some were confused. A few were uneasy. They realized that humans were different. Not in size, not in weapons, and not in speed, but in something deeper. Humans had patience, resilience, and the ability to endure when others expected failure. As the shuttle came into view, Roland slowed his pace slightly. The vessel gleamed in the sunlight, a simple craft compared to the elaborate ships of the council. Yet it did not matter. The shuttle was a tool, not a symbol of strength. Roland did not need symbols. His actions had already spoken volumes. His delegation approached, their faces reflecting admiration and understanding. They had watched him face cruelty and tests, and they had seen how he handled it, with calm intelligence and dignity. They understood the lesson without a word being spoken. Strength was not in weapons or armor alone. It was in courage, focus, and the ability to remain steadfast under pressure. One of the younger humans, named Terran, spoke quietly. "Roland, how do you do it? How do you remain so calm when they speak such harsh words?" Roland looked at him without breaking stride. His eyes were steady, thoughtful, and patient. "Courage is not shown in shouting or fighting," he said softly. "It is shown in control, in understanding, and in walking forward when others want you to falter. They cannot take away what is inside. They cannot touch what you know is true about yourself." Terran nodded, absorbing the lesson. Other humans in the delegation listened in silence, learning by example. Roland's actions were teaching more than words could. He was demonstrating the strength of humanity in a way the council could not ignore. As the shuttle doors opened, Roland paused for a moment. He looked back toward the council building, toward the chamber where Vasha and the other delegates had sat. He saw them whispering, uncertain, some even uncomfortable. He did not smile. He did not gloat. He simply observed. The lesson had been delivered quietly but firmly. He stepped into the shuttle, followed by his delegation. The doors closed, sealing them inside the small craft. Roland moved to the pilot's seat, his posture calm and confident. He glanced at the controls briefly, then allowed Terran to take a position beside him. The journey back to their quarters would be long, but the shuttle's movement did not disturb his focus. Outside, the city stretched wide under the twin suns. Towering structures reflected light like mirrors, ships gliding between platforms. The aliens watched the shuttle lift into the air, carrying the human delegation away. Some felt a pang of doubt. They had underestimated humans, and now the demonstration of patience, courage, and intelligence challenged everything they had assumed. Inside the shuttle, Roland spoke to his delegation. "Remember this," he said quietly. "Strength is not only in weapons, machines, or skill. Strength is also in courage, patience, and the ability to face cruelty without giving it power over you. This is the way of humans. It is the way that allows us to survive, to adapt, and to thrive." Terran listened closely, nodding. Others remained silent, absorbing the lesson in their own way. Roland's calm authority left a strong impression. They would carry this understanding forward, applying it in trade, negotiation, and exploration. Humans had shown they could compete in the galaxy not by aggression, but by intellect, courage, and dignity. As the shuttle moved higher, leaving the city behind, Roland reflected on what had just occurred. The Council's challenge had been designed to belittle humans. Vasha's words had been cruel, meant to humiliate. Yet none of it had shaken him. He had faced the tests, the insults, and the expectations with composure. He had proven that humans were not fragile in the ways the Council assumed. He thought about the future. Humans would continue to travel the stars, encountering prejudice, doubt, and challenges. They would face civilizations that underestimated them, tried to diminish them, or attempted to humiliate them. Roland understood that his example was important. It would inspire other humans to remain calm, to rely on intelligence and courage, and to stand firm in their values. Outside the shuttle, the twin suns set slowly behind the city. Light reflected off the metallic surfaces of towers and ships. The world of alien civilization seemed vast, intimidating, and unyielding. Yet Roland did not feel fear. He knew that humans had something that no challenge, insult, or machine could take away. They had patience, ingenuity, courage, and the ability to remain steadfast when others expected weakness. The shuttle glided through the airways, leaving the city behind. Roland's delegation remained close, each member quietly absorbing the lessons they had witnessed. They had seen a human face cruelty and challenge, and they had seen him respond with dignity, intelligence, and courage. It was a demonstration more powerful than any speech, more effective than any weapon. Roland turned his gaze toward the stars visible through the shuttle's windows. He thought about humanity's place in the galaxy. There were worlds filled with civilizations that judged by appearance and underestimated outsiders. There were councils and leaders who valued arrogance over principle. Yet humans had a strength that could not be measured by weapons, armor, or speed. It was the strength of the mind, the courage of the heart, and the quiet dignity that allowed them to walk away without fear or shame. Terran spoke again, quietly this time. "Do you think they will ever understand us?" Roland considered this. Some may eventually, others may never see it. But it does not matter. Humans will continue to grow to explore and to succeed. The understanding of others is not required for our strength. Our actions, our courage, and our dignity are enough. The shuttle moved faster now, leaving the city completely behind. The alien council buildings became small dots in the distance. Roland remained calm, focused, and steady. He had faced the cruel words, completed the challenge, and demonstrated the quiet power of humans. This walk away, this silent exit, was more than physical movement. It was a lesson in principle. It was proof that humans could face adversity, endure insult, and maintain dignity in the most challenging circumstances. It was proof that strength could exist quietly, without show, and still command respect. Roland's delegation followed his example, their movements calm and precise. They had witnessed something that would remain with them forever. Humans were capable of endurance, courage, and intelligence beyond what many civilizations realized. They had learned that arrogance, cruelty, and prejudice could be met with patience and dignity, and that sometimes the most powerful statement was a quiet walk away. As the stars grew brighter outside the shuttle, Roland remained focused. The galaxy was wide, filled with challenges, conflicts, and civilizations that doubted humanity. Yet he knew that humans had a way to succeed that others often overlooked. They relied on courage, intelligence, and the ability to face adversity without allowing cruelty to shake them. Roland's shuttle arrived at the human quarters, a simple complex on the edge of the city. The structures were smaller and less impressive than the towering alien buildings, but they had a warmth and practicality that humans valued. The delegation stepped out, their faces reflecting quiet pride and reflection. They had seen their leader face cruelty and challenge with patience, courage, and intelligence. Roland moved through the corridors with calm purpose. His delegation followed, keeping pace without speaking. The human quarters were not a place for celebration. This was a place for thought, for reflection, and for preparation for the next steps. Humans in the galaxy were often underestimated, and Roland knew that respect was not given easily. It had to be earned. The Council's challenge had tested more than strength. It had tested intelligence, patience, and the ability to endure humiliation without losing dignity. Roland had faced every part of it without faltering. He had proven that humans had qualities that others could not measure easily: courage, ingenuity, and quiet confidence. As they entered the main hall, other humans looked up from their work. Engineers were adjusting equipment, traders were preparing logs, and explorers were reviewing maps of distant worlds. All of them paused, aware that something significant had occurred. Roland's calm presence filled the room. He did not speak immediately. He did not need to. The story of his challenge had already reached them. Terran, who had followed closely during the shuttle ride, approached him. "Roland, the Council. They underestimated us. They expected us to fail, and yet you proved them wrong without anger, without weapons, without even a word of defiance. How do you do it?" Roland looked at him, his eyes steady and thoughtful. "Strength is not always shown with force," he said softly. "Intelligence is not only knowledge. Courage is not always loud. Sometimes the greatest power comes from patience, observation, and the ability to remain calm when others try to provoke you. That is the human way." The humans listened closely. They had seen the challenge, felt the tension, and observed Roland's actions. His calmness had taught them more than any speech or instruction could. The lesson was clear. Humans had a power that others often failed to recognize. It was a power rooted in character, in the mind, and in the courage to act thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Meanwhile, on the alien council planet, word of Roland's actions spread quickly. Delegates whispered about the human who had faced cruel words, completed impossible challenges, and walked away in silence. Some were confused, others uneasy. They realized that they had misjudged the human species. They had assumed weakness, fragility, and inferiority. Yet here was proof that humans had a resilience and intelligence that could not be ignored. Commander Vasha remained in the council chambers, her eyes focused on the reports of Roland's actions. She could not admit it openly, but there was a flicker of respect in her gaze. The human had proven something beyond her expectations. Not only had he succeeded in the challenges, but he had done so in a way that demonstrated the quiet strength of humanity. Back in the human quarters, Roland gathered his delegation in the central hall. "We have shown the council that humans are capable," he said. "But our journey does not end here. There are still many worlds where we will face doubt, insult, and prejudice. There will be challenges designed to humiliate us. And there will be those who will try to measure our worth by force or appearance. Remember this lesson. Our strength is in our courage, our intelligence, and our dignity. Do not let words, fear, or doubt shake you. Taryn nodded, absorbing every word. Other members of the delegation listened silently, feeling the weight of the lesson. It was not just about surviving challenges. It was about teaching others, demonstrating principles, and showing that humans were capable of more than the galaxy had expected. Roland's eyes moved to the windows, looking toward the distant stars. Our place in the galaxy is not guaranteed, he continued. We must prove ourselves not through arrogance or aggression, but through action, patience, and understanding. Humans will be remembered not for fear or strength alone, but for our resilience, creativity, and courage. That is the power that will carry us forward. As the hours passed, the human delegation prepared for the next phase of their mission. They would continue to trade, explore, and negotiate. They would face civilizations that doubted them, councils that mocked them, and challenges that tested their limits. Yet they carried the lesson of Roland's calm, steady presence. They had seen what it meant to remain unshaken in the face of cruelty. Roland himself did not rest. He reviewed reports, observed the human technology, and considered the next steps for their interactions with alien civilizations. Every decision he made was guided by the principle he had demonstrated. Intelligence, patience, courage, and dignity were stronger than words, weapons, or intimidation. Days passed, and the council continued to discuss the events of the challenge. Some delegates who had initially doubted humans began to reconsider their assumptions. They realized that strength was not always visible, that courage was not always loud, and that intelligence could not always be measured by alien standards. Humans had qualities that were subtle, powerful, and difficult to define. Roland's actions became a point of discussion among other human groups across the galaxy. Explorers, traders, and diplomats shared the story. They learned that facing challenges with calm, patience, and intelligence could earn respect in ways aggression never could. Roland's example inspired humans to act thoughtfully, strategically, and courageously. One evening, Roland stood on the observation deck of the human quarters, looking at the stars. The galaxy was vast and full of civilizations that doubted humans. Yet he did not feel fear. He understood that humanity had a unique strength, the ability to endure, to adapt, and to thrive under circumstances that others would find impossible. Taryn joined him quietly. "Do you think we have changed their minds?" he asked. Roland considered this. "Some may understand. Others may never recognize our strength. But it does not matter. Respect is earned through action and principle, not expectation. What matters is that we act with intelligence, courage, and dignity. That is the human way, and it is enough." The stars twinkled above, each one a world full of possibilities, challenges, and opportunities. Roland's delegation felt a sense of purpose. They had seen a demonstration of the human way, quiet, strong, and principled. They understood that the future of humanity in the galaxy depended not on fear, aggression, or arrogance, but on patience, intelligence, courage, and dignity. Roland's words and actions created a ripple effect. Humans across the colonies began to emulate the principles he demonstrated. They approached negotiations with calm, faced challenges with thoughtful planning, and endured cruelty without faltering. The reputation of humanity began to change, slowly but steadily. Other civilizations started to recognize that humans were more than their appearance or reputation suggested. Back on the Council planet, even Commander Vasha found herself reconsidering. She did not speak of it openly, but the lesson was clear. Humans were resilient, clever, and brave in ways that could not be measured by traditional tests of strength. They had a unique power, the ability to face adversity calmly, intelligently, and with dignity. Roland continued to lead, guiding humans in trade, exploration, and diplomacy. He trained them not only in skills but in the principles he had demonstrated. Strength was not only in weapons or armor. Intelligence was not only in learning. Courage was not always in confrontation. Dignity and patience could be more powerful than any test, more enduring than any insult, and more respected than any display of force. The galaxy was vast, and challenges awaited. Some would doubt humans. Some would attempt to humiliate them. Some would underestimate them completely. Yet Roland knew that humanity had a way to succeed. They had the ability to act thoughtfully, endure challenges, and maintain courage and dignity even in the face of cruelty. The human way had been demonstrated in the council chambers, in the arena, and in the quiet walk away from insult. It was a lesson that would echo through the galaxy. Humans would not always need weapons or displays of force to earn respect. Sometimes the simplest actions, patience, intelligence, courage, and dignity, were the most powerful. As Roland looked at the stars, he understood that this was only the beginning. Humanity's place in the galaxy would continue to be challenged, tested, and questioned. Yet with each challenge, humans would show their strength in ways that others could not anticipate. Their ingenuity, courage, and dignity would carry them forward. The story of the human who faced cruel words, completed the impossible, and walked away in silence became legend among humans and inspired awe among alien civilizations. It was a story not of weapons or domination, but of principle. It was a story that reminded all that true strength is measured in character, not appearance. And in the quiet of the observation deck, with the stars shining brightly above, Roland knew that humanity had a future among the stars, a future built not on fear, not on arrogance, but on courage, intelligence, and the quiet power of dignity. The human way had been proven, and it would endure. Roland turned to his delegation, each member inspired and determined. "Remember this always," he said softly. "No matter what worlds we face, no matter what challenges come, humans have a way. We endure, we adapt, we succeed. That is our strength, and that is our future." The human delegation nodded, understanding the weight of his words. They had seen the lesson firsthand. They had witnessed the quiet triumph of courage, patience, intelligence, and dignity. And they knew that this way, the human way, would guide them across the stars for generations to come. The galaxy was wide, full of unknowns and challenges. Yet humanity had shown its power, not through weapons or dominance, but through the quiet strength of the mind and heart. Roland looked up at the stars once more. Humanity's story among the stars had only begun, and he knew it would be a story of courage, wisdom, and dignity that no cruelty, challenge, or insult could ever destroy.